Greetings to you all. Today's teaching is a series in which I'm going to be looking at the role that has been assigned to the Hebrew people during the end times. And in this series I'm going to consider the role of the forward role of the martyrs, and then we are going to look at the regathering of the Hebrew people, and then we are going to look at the two witnesses. Then we are going to even look at the 144, and we are going to continue into the millennium and and see the role that has been assigned to the Hebrew people during the millennium period. And then we talk about the glorification, Jesus glorified, and then the final one will be on the New Jerusalem coming down from heaven, in which the kingdom is everything, all uncleanliness on earth has been done away with, and a new heaven and an earth, and we have now the kingdom of God fully established as it was, restored as it was at first. So in the first of this series, we are going to look at the Hebrew people as martyrs, and they were called to be martyrs. And this we understand from the church of Smyrna in Revelation chapter 2, verses 8 to 11, which reads, "Write this to the angel of the church of Smyrna." And it is Christ talking, and he says, "The one who is first and the last, who died and came to life again, says this: I know your troubles, and that you are poor, but really you are rich. I know the bad things, the slander, the blasphemy some people say about you. They say they are Jews, but they are not true Jews." So there are people who have stolen the identity of the Jewish people, and we'll see who they are in a minute. They are, in fact, the synagogue that belongs to Satan. So do not be afraid of what you are about to suffer. That this is what Christ is saying. "I tell you, the devil will put some of you in prison to test you, and you will suffer, and you'll be persecuted for 10 days. He's talking about a period of 10 years. But be faithful, and even if you have to die, I will give you the crown of life." It continues, just to amplify that from the Amplified translation, it reads, "For nothing that you are about to suffer." So nothing that you are about to suffer. No, so I'll take that again. Fear nothing that you are about to suffer. Be aware that the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested in your faith for 10 days, 10 years, and you will have tribulation in that period, but be faithful to a point of death. If you must die for your faith, I will give you the crown of life. So there are some who have to die because of their faith. Some will be given a way out, another way out, but either way, he's mainly talking about the harvesting of martyrs. We'll see God's intention and a program towards later on in the presentation. And then he continues in verse 11, which reads, "Everyone who has ears should listen to what the Spirit says to the churches." Now, the Hebrew people, we know that they were put in an incubator, which was Egypt, for a while. Then they were taken out, and in Exodus 15:27 we actually see a glimpse of what their destiny was. And he says, "And they, the Israelites, came to Elim, and there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they camped there by the waters." So here we have a picture of how the Hebrews were destined to go out. We're going to be sent out to evangelize the Gentiles. Because 70 stands for the 70 Gentiles, 70 nations, and the Hebrews are the springs of water who are going to nourish these palm trees. And we'll see what the outcome of that is later on as we proceed. In Deuteronomy 28, verses 63 and 65 and 68, Moses tells them that, he says, just as the Lord was once happy with you and gave you good things and made you grow in number, so then the Lord will be happy to ruin and destroy you, and you will be removed from the land you are entering to take as your possession. Then the Lord will scatter you among the nations from one end of the earth to the other. Then you will serve other gods and wood and stone, gods that neither you nor your ancestors, fathers have known. And then he's saying that when he scattered you to those nations, you will have no rest among those nations and no place that is yours. You will just be a slave, and you will just be a homeless people. But of course, we know that there's a small number that remained when they were finally driven out of the land, the promised land, in 70 AD. But anyway, you will have no rest in those countries where I'm going to scatter you. The Lord will make your mind, your heart worried, you tremble, your sight weak, and your soul sad and languished and depressed. And he goes on in 68 to say, the Lord is going to send you back to Egypt in ships, even though I, Moses, said you would never go back to Egypt. And there you will try to sell yourself as slaves to your enemies, but no one will buy you. So basically they were going to be slaves or an underclass people in those countries wherever they were, especially when they went as slaves. And there'll be no end to it, even though they may appear to be in a semblance of freedom. They don't really, because they actually don't have a homeland, a home of their own. Then we continue this now. Now we're talking about 70 AD. That's when in Luke 21:24, where it says, there they will be killed by sword and taken as prisoners to all nations. Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is over, until it is fulfilled. So this is when they were finally kicked out and the temple destroyed and ransacked, and they were driven out of their land, and they went out now as refugees. They had no land, and we know that they don't have any land. They don't have a homeland. The one that they have is not their own. We'll come to that in a little while. So in Mark 13:14 it says, but when you see the abomination of desolation standing in the sanctuary, there where it ought not to be, let the reader understand that those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. So they're saying that when they see the desolation of the abomination of desolation in the temple, then they know that it's time to run. And so they ran away, and some of them were taken slaves within the Middle East, especially I think in Egypt. There were millions of them that the price of slaves actually dropped to a ridiculous low. Others made it into Africa and went down further beyond Egypt, and a lot of them ended. And in North Africa, they went westwards, and some of them actually even ended up in the Americas, and some in Africa. And from Africa, they were also taken as slaves to all parts of the world. Not to mention that there were already some Hebrews who were scattered for economic reasons throughout the whole empire. These ones were not affected by this particular incident of being driven out of Jerusalem or Israel at the time, and they continued to spread, and they've changed appearance over the years and so forth, and some of them ended up in America from Europe. There's a time when they were greatly persecuted within Europe. Some were sent back to Africa. Others went to the New World to escape the prejudice that they were experiencing, because they were a blessed people. They had certain blessings, but they were almost like dampened by the prejudice that they suffered. So now we go to Revelation 12, 6 and 8. Now we are talking about the woman who represents Israel and the church. ran away because when Satan wanted to capture him, her, because she was running away with the children, she escaped and she fled into the desert wilderness to a place God prepared for her, where she would he would take care of her, and for 1,260 days, that's 3.5 years. And the way she escaped, we see this in Revelation 12:14 and to 18. But the woman was given 2 wings, and she flew off with the children and to this place in the desert which was prepared for her. There she will be taken care of and nourished for 3.5 years. The serpent did give chase, but he did not manage to stop her. Here they say that, but the earth, because he spewed water and tried to flood her and stop her from leaving. I think he basically is saying that it caused some kind of trouble to try and prevent her from escaping. But the Bible puts it this way: but the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the water that came from the mouth of the dragon. So she did manage to escape. And the dragon was therefore very angry and furious that he had lost the woman. So he went off back to make war against all her other children, the rest of her seed, those who obey the commands of God and who have the message of Jesus taught. So now we come back, so we know that the woman escaped. Then the Satan went after the rest of her children to capture them. In Daniel 9:29, verse 26, it reads, "And he will enter into a binding and irrevocable covenant with the many for 1 week, 7 years. But in the middle of the week, he will stop the sacrifice and grain offerings in the temple." And on the wing, in the face of the abomination that will come, he will, in the face of that, when he does present himself as God in the temple, the people are now, as we saw in Mark, were told that they should actually run for their life. And in Daniel 11:36-37, it says, "Then the king, the Antichrist, will do exactly as he pleases. He will exalt himself and magnify himself above every god, and will speak astounding, monstrous, outrageous, blasphemous, and disgusting things against the God of gods. But he will prosper until his time comes to an end." And they say something about this Antichrist. They say that he will have no regard for the gods of their fathers, nor for the desire of women. Yes, he will not desire women, and he will not regard any other god, and he will actually magnify himself above all of them. However, so going back to Mark, it says that when this man presents himself in the temple as God, the people should run, and it puts it this way: whoever is on the rooftop must not go back and enter the house or go inside to take anything out of the house. Whoever is in the field must not turn back to get his coat. And woe to those who are pregnant, but it's going to be a difficult period. And at that time, there will be such tribulation as has not occurred from the beginning of creation, which God made until now, and never will be again. The Good News Translation puts it this way: it says, this tribulation will be far worse than any other in the world. It will be worse than any the world has ever known. The Phillips puts it this way, that it will be utter misery. The New International Translation puts it this way, that distress is unequaled in all history in this age. So, but then it continues to say that, but if the Lord had not shortened this period, no human life would have survived. But the Lord decided to shorten this period to save his elect. So now we want to look into the various components. We talked about 10 years. So this 10-year period is a period of tribulation, and it's basically the end of it all is the last 3 years, which is a great tribulation, and then before that, the first 3.5 years of the 7 is the period when this covenant that he is established in the world is in place, and before that there's a 3-year period, which I think is basically the period when the architecture of the New World Order is being formed and established in Babylon and then throughout the whole world, which is going to be the system that is going to be, when it's reached its full extent and full force, will be the system that will be in play, especially in the last 3.5 years, which is the Great Tribulation. So the last 3.5 years of the 10-year period is the worst in the history of this age, even worse than the violence and corruption of Genesis 6, when God decided to destroy all living creatures except those in the ark and 8 people. It seems to me that the start of the 10-year period is basically generalized tribulation. And then, yes, of course, there's people of God have always been persecuted throughout the world, especially the Muslim world and other countries. But I think for measurement for the end times, we're talking about this period beginning the establishment in the early formative stage, and when it reaches when it's in full bloom in the last 3.5 years of the 10-year period. So in the earlier part is the generalized tribulation, which actually begins with the setting up of totalitarian regimes in Babylon. In the early stages, the distress will be caused by gradual suppression of all freedoms and benefits taken away, as we are witnessing right now in Babylon. Fears being instilled and the population cowered. It's like a python that is steadily tightening its stranglehold over the people, and until it establishes the envisaged new order. And as the new order moves across the world in a full and more complete way, this model of the totalitarian system is going to be transferred and transported and implemented in all the other various countries throughout the whole world. And it is when he has done that when meanwhile there is war raging in the Middle East over Israel, and I think this is where he comes in after the first 3 years. Then he puts into place this covenant, irrevocable covenant, 7-year covenant, to halt hostilities, and it is during this period that the Israelis are able to build the temple and establish the sacrificial animal sacrificial system there as in the past. And of course, the plan of the temple is the one that we find in Ezekiel. So he is going to now present himself as a peacemaker. Yes, to this conflict, presenting himself as restoring the much needed peace and making himself the glory, making himself glorious and giving him a good reputation, and then and obviously to heighten his profile throughout the world as someone who did something good. And so that is then. But then after 3.5 years, in the view of what happened, as we saw in Revelation, when he tried to stop the woman with her children from departing, that was midway of the last 7 years of the 10. when he tried to stop her from leaving and he failed, then he decided to go after the other children. So he entered into this irrevocable covenant for 1 week, and then he broke it midway. Anyway, when he had entered into that covenant, the world will applaud him and hail him a great peacemaker and put their confidence in him. And there will be a little let off from the higher levels of distress and tribulation and persecution, mainly because the whole world is conforming to the new world order which he, the Antichrist, is now running. And of course, I actually think the Antichrist is very happy to allow the temple to be built, because his primary target is always God's people. So Israel is his target. So he wants to take the place of Christ, and he wants to go to his temple to do that. So it is in his interest, and when it is done, he allows it, knowing all the while that he's going to go and present himself as God in that temple. So there'll be a little let off in that first 3 years when they're building the temple and establishing their sacrificial systems, and as can be expected, the terror and persecution was obviously continued throughout the rest of the world, even in that place, but low key. It had not become very precise in terms of the end goal. It would appear that initially it was just basically to cow everybody and intimidate people to conform to being to become robots in this system, obedient robots with no opinion and doing as they are told. And as can be expected, the terror would continue, but if only to let people know that there is no change of regime or plan. But as at first the children of the woman, that is Israel, will not know peace. They have never been allowed to know peace. It would continue. The threat is always there. And in his mind, that is the Antichrist, he knows that he will have no peace himself until Israel itself is crushed one way or another. When he decides that the central issue of his reign now must come out, and therefore his true identity must now be revealed to the world, then he will demand open worship. That's when he presents himself in the temple. So the violence level, when from that moment onwards, are going to shoot right up, and the world will experience tribulation and violence as it has never seen it before since the beginning of this age. And because of this, that's in and because he's now presented himself as a God in the temple of God in Jerusalem, and because of this, or as a result of, he reneges on the binding contract because he's failed to stop the woman from fleeing to the wilderness. The sacrifices and grain offerings are stopped, and the children of God know full well that they are now in great danger, and they now to flee for their lives. But God had, in the meantime, in Revelation 14:9-10, had told his people that whoever takes, if anyone worships the beast or his idol, his image, and gets or takes the beast's mark on stamp on his forehead or on the hand, that one will drink the wine of God's anger, full force, with full strength, because God is not going to allow you to come back. Once you take the mark of the beast, you've made your decision, and there is no way coming back. So if you want to show that you are with him, you cannot take the mark. This is what God does. So he's told him, yes, I know what is going on, but if you take the mark, you're in trouble. Now, to up the game, the Antichrist decides now, yes, of course, yeah, you must take my mark, but to make sure that you take the mark is when he says that no one can buy or sell without that particular mark. Now, don't forget, this is a closed system where there are very few jobs and everybody is basically living on allowances. And if you don't take the mask and you are just a person who relies on allowances, it will be cut from you. And for those who work, you will not be allowed to work. So either way is where he is now. The situation is very is clear cut. It's either A or B, and there's no middle ground. So if you want to survive in this highly controlled economy, it will be very difficult, if not impossible, to survive except for God. This can then be said to be a time of the greatest falling away of people, because people now, they will think emotionally, they will stop thinking and worry about this present life and wanting to preserve it. And they fear that losing their benefits, they will starve to death. And in any case, even before you starve to death, he would have killed you. That is why the 3.5 years will be a most terrible time, the most terrible time in this age. It will be hell on earth, yet there is a way out. There are ways out. God saves his people this way or that way. In Jeremiah 30 verse 7 it reads, "How awful that day will be, no other will be like it. It will be a time of trouble for Jacob, but he will be saved out of it." In Romans 10:13 it reads, "Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." So we know that there's already a temple in existence in Jerusalem, as we mentioned. It's fully functional and it's offering sacrifices. And we know that the temple is built to the specifications of Ezekiel 38 onwards. So when the woman, Israel, escaped to the wilderness, and he presents himself in the temple as a god, and the people run away, he stops all that. So the Antichrist now, he tightens his grip. He goes after the Christians or God's children with a vengeance and a cruelty unmatched. Now, meanwhile, the Israel itself is under siege. It's now under the control of the Antichrist. It's under the control of the Antichrist. And he wants to go into the temple to get worship, and not only from the general population, but he wants even the Jews, especially that is his prize. He wants to get the worship of the Hebrew people, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who are believers, who are loyal to Christ. In Luke 18, verses 6 to 8, it reads, "I tell you, God will help his people quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes again, will he find those on earth? Will he find those on earth who believe in him?" Put another way, it says God's faithfulness is certain, but the question is whether the people will remain faithful to him. The Message translation puts it this way. At the end of it says, but how much of that kind of persistent faith will the Son of Man find on the earth when he returns in the face of persecution and this great tribulation, when people are now prepared, forced to make a choice between life and death for Christ. Most people are going to fall away. They will go to take the easy way out. So, as we said, that the 10-year period is a generalized tribulation. So from the generalized tribulation in the formative years, the first 3 years and so, it will gradually develop into the spearhead and the knife edge of the Great Tribulation of the last 3.5 years. And I do not have it's very difficult for me to say that the tribulation, the 10-year period has actually begun. But I think we can get an idea of where we are if we consider what is actually happening in Babylon at the moment. If you watch that and assess it, because I think that is a big barometer of where we are in world history. For it is a barometer for gauging how near we are to the establishment of the new world order, generalized through the multilateral bodies that are going to be used. And it's also what is being established right now in Babylon is a template of the governance that will be obtaining in all the countries on earth. And we know that Christians will have to continue to be we know that Christians have been and continue to be greatly persecuted in many jurisdictions. But this 10-year period is peculiar to this end times, when it becomes like a continuous period of focus on bombarding and shaping and intimidating and suppressing and oppressing mankind. Because Satan hates mankind. So he's going to establish a lawless society where he makes laws whenever he feels like it, and it is law and there's no court of law. There are no courts of law. I think the need for judges and lawyers is a thing of the past. As we can already see, they have no value, have no use anywhere, especially if we observe what's actually happening, what is happening in Babylon. Although at this stage we're still in the early ages of oppression and suppression. And although right now it's started off with certain groups being earmarked based on appearance, it's bound to widen. And this will be, and by the nature of it, it will continue to widen and broaden and until it gives birth to the baby that is required for the end times, this totalitarian system that is robust and most cruel. And it will continue until this baby is birthed. So it must widen and encompass all aspects of political, social, and religious institutions and arrangements of life as we know it, and must suppress and will surpass the Second World War totalitarian regimes of Germany, Italy, and Japan. And at the end of it
4 o'clock.
And at the end of it all, at the end of it, in the last 3.5 years, the question will be, who do you worship? Everything is going to boil down to that particular question: who do you worship? And which must be answered on pain of death. The new order will strongly suggest taking on your body the mark of the beast. And by now, and leading up to this mark, the one is like can demonstrate his willingness of entering into living in this new world order by accepting certain technologies, which basically suggest that as we are created, it's inferior. As God created us, it's inferior. We are inferior, and they will give us, put chips in our brains, or give us lenses for eyes. They will give us metal, titanium for bones. They will just basically alter everything God had God's creation. They will alter it to suit themselves, which is a corruption of everything, and basically saying that they think they could have done a better job. So this will be obviously an indication that you have bought into the new system, the more superior system. We are going to live longer, have a better life. You are going to be healthier, and at this point, it is at this point that the age will close, when we are deciding, when we have to decide, who do you worship? That is all that will be in the last 3 years. The Great Tribulation is, who do you serve? Who do you worship? In Revelation 13:4, it reads, so, speaking for the beast system, so they worship the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who is able to make war with him. So So Satan, as I said, is concerned, his focal point is he's going to move his operations to Jerusalem, the Holy Land. And at that time, and before the coming into force of the binding covenant, as we said earlier, he's going to come to a pact and carve out some kind of peace deal where Israel will not be attacked, and in that period of that lull, that's when they'll be able to construct the temple. So the state of that country basically represents those people who usurped, or the destiny stealers that stole someone else's destiny. And the evidence of this is in Genesis 9:27, where it says, "I pray God," this is Noah, "that you'll give Japheth more and more land, and let him take over the territory of Shem. May Canaan be his slave." Yet there is still in that territory, even though the Japheth has taken it over, and they're bought into the Judaism, which does not recognize Christ, yet still in that territory there's a sizable population outside the mainstream of non-believers, even though they claim to be Hebrew, who are outside the mainstream, and this group is the one that comprises the true Israel, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, loyal to Christ, the Anointed. And the situation in Israel can be likened to Ecclesiastes chapter 10, verse 7, which reads, "I have seen servants riding horseback like princes, and princes walking like servants." So here we are talking about stolen destinies. And it is this group that the Revelation chapter 2, 7, 8, which we read at the beginning, refers. It is the harvest of this group that God has in mind, but also includes other Israelites wherever they may be. I hasten to say that the harvest extends to and includes Christians from all other population groups within and without the Promised Land. So here we are talking about also other Christians. They are earmarked for martyrdom. In Daniel 7, 21 to 22, it reads, "As I watched the horn, making war against God's holy people, and was defeating them until God, who has been alive forever, came, he judged in favor of the holy people who belong to the Most High. Then the time came for everything to come to an end." Remember, we talked about that Satan has been given 3.5 years to do what he wants to do, free reign to come in his element, and he did a job. But if it had God not shortened that period, there would be no one left on earth. So God's harvest of martyrs is worldwide, beginning in Jerusalem, Israel, with his own people. This is why I was saying that this is we are talking about Christ, about the Hebrew people rather, being in God's plan. He is never forgotten about them. He says, "I've always loved you." So they are there, they're the forefront of this great tribulation, because they are there. They may not be, some of them are not allowed to say anything, but they are there. So God's harvest of martyrs through the hand of Satan is worldwide, beginning in Jerusalem, in Israel. So now, coming back to the question of martyrdom, in Revelation 6, verses 9 to 11, it says, "When the Lamb opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of those who had been killed because they were faithful to the word of God and to the message they had received. These souls cried out to God in a loud voice, saying, 'Holy and true Lord, Master, how long will you judge the people? How long until you judge the people of this world and punish them for killing us?' Then each of them was given a white robe and told to wait for a short while longer. Why? Because God had a plan. His plan is that they must wait until their fellow servants and brothers and sisters in the service of Christ. This is the more wider embracing of the concept of the idea of martyrdom. Comes in, both of the men and women, who must be as they were killed for Christ. They must also be killed for the faith. And they had to wait. They had to wait until all of this was finished and completed before God would punish the people who killed, who martyred them. In Revelation 7, again, chapters, verses 9 to 17, it says, and after the vision of these things, I looked, and there was a great number of people, so many that no one could count them. They were from every nation, tribe, people, and language of the earth. They were all standing before the throne and before the Lamb, wearing white robes. They were shouting in a loud voice, salvation belongs to our God, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. All the angels were standing around the throne, and the elders, and the elders and the four living creatures. They all bowed down on their faces, saying, Amen. Praise, glory, wisdom, thanks, honor, power, and strength, might belong to our God forever and ever. And so when he saw this, John, one of the elders, asked him, who are these people who are praising God in this way? He says, I don't know. He says, I don't know, you tell me. And then the elder said to him, these are the people who have come out of the great distress, tribulation. They have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb, and for having believed in Jesus, and their sins were forgiven through Christ's death and resurrection. And because of this, the people, the martyrs, they are before the throne of God. They worship him day and night in the temple. These people who sacrificed their lives and earned life, and they lost their life to gain life, will never be hungry again. They will never be thirsty again. The sun will not hurt or strike them or beat down on them, and no, the heat will not scorch or burn them. And because of this, because this protection they're going, this privilege that they're having, is because the Lamb at the center of the throne will be their shepherd. He will guide them to the springs of water that give life, living water, the water of life, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. So at this now, the faith is actualized. There's no longer the hope of something that is not that you believe in, but you are seeing it. It is at this point that faith becomes real and tangible. Hope is dead, is no longer relevant. If you now see and hold it and behold it as real to our physical senses, we are now living in real time. Our new reality is of things that we can see and live. We no longer have to hope for them. We are living in them. And it is on this note that we come to our introspection, and basically saying that I have just shown in a way that the Hebrew people are still very much in God's plan. Just as they were his special children at the beginning, they are going to continue playing certain roles right up to the end and even into the millennium, and they are going to be honored in the new kingdom when it is fully established after the new millennium. So on this note, we have our introspection and meditation. Coming out of Revelation, chapter 10, verses 8 to 11. Then I heard the same voice from heaven again, saying to me, go and take the open scroll that is in the hand of the angel that is standing on the sea and on the land. So I went to the angel and told him to give me the small scroll, and he said to me, take the scroll and eat it, a symbol of internalizing the word. It will be sour, bitter in your stomach, because it is a message of judgment, but in your mouth it will be sweet as honey, because it is God's word, and because it brings salvation and vindication to his people. So I took the small scroll from the angel's hand and ate it. In my mouth it tasted sweet as honey, but after I ate it, it was sour, bitter in my stomach. Then I was told, you must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, languages, and kings. You must share the word you've just received. The contemporary English version for the last verse is, then some voices said, keep on telling what will happen to the people of many nations and races and languages, and also to kings. And our benediction comes out of Numbers, chapter 6, verses 22 to 27. The Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron and his sons, this is how you should bless the Israelites. Say to them, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord guard you. May the Lord show you his kindness and show his face, and make his face shine upon you. And may the Lord have mercy on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord watch over you, lift up his face, presence, and countenance upon you, and give you peace. So Aaron and his sons will bless the Israelites with my name, and I will bless them. Thank you, and may God bless you all.